Where's the music? Do 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 do. What's up? How's it going?
Oh, muted.
You're muted. You gotta hit your unmute button.
How about now?
Yeah, look at that.
I can zoom.
Hey man, how's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. This
Yeah,
is sort of a self-imposed torture, but it works well. So for people who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do, and where we can find you online?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Brandon Michael Barker. I am the artist, also known as ManOrMonster of ManOrMonster Studios, creator of Warlords of Wor, among other things. Generally, you can find me on Instagram at ManOrMonster or at Warlords of Wor. ManOrMonster has kind of morphed over the years into sort of a personal collector page more than anything else. And Warlords of Wor is my main creative focus, where you'll find my my current toy line.
So tell me, like before you got to toys, how you started. Were you always creative? Did you always consider yourself an artist? How was, up until that first toy release? Can you give me sort of like the origin story?
Yeah. I mean, I've art's always been a part of my family. My grandparents ran a photography studio, so that's kind of the environment that I grew up in. Back before, Photoshop, you touched up photos by hand. I mean, my grandma sat at the kitchen table with colored pencils and doctored up photos. Like, that's how you removed red eye and shit like that, was with colored pencils directly on the print. So she had paints and all kinds of stuff around. My mom was also very creative. She did a lot of illustration and also photography. So I was just kind of, it was there. My grandmother gave me some watercolors at the age of 3, and I think the first thing that I painted was like a rabbit in a field, and the second thing that I painted was Luke Skywalker fighting Darth Vader with his hand cut off and a bloody stump. So yeah, I mean, that's going way back. But yeah, it's always been with me. I fancied myself a bit of a film auteur for about 8 minutes, and went to film school out of high school. Did not last long there, but eventually took my creative endeavors into art school and got a degree in fine art with a focus in illustration, but also did a lot of ceramics, which is what really kind of led me directly into bootleg toys. So I was doing a lot of printmaking. I did a lot of screen printing. So, I kind of had this, I don't know, the sense of what editioning was already, but then going into ceramics, I was doing a lot of slip cast porcelain. So I was making molds, and one of the very first things that I made a mold of was a He-Man figure. And so
as one does.
As one does. I mean, why not, right? So it was really like immediately after that I was sort of reintroduced into the possibility of making resin bootleg figures. And that's kind of where I got my start, right around late 2011, early 2012.
I would say that you were one of I was collecting Sucklord stuff, mid 2000s, and I was sort of resisting collecting anything else. And I just saw things popping up, and I saw your work. I saw Killer Bootlegs. Ian was handing me a toy, and then there were just a couple toys that sort of like pushed me over the edge. And I'll show you one of them. It is Bosk Hog. And this Cosmic Crusade line was so like, it was one of the toys that just made me realize that, there's another dimension to resin toys. It's not just this like Sucklord monolith. Like there's other artists in the scene who have their own voice. And then this line kept going. I don't know if you remember, I was always like bugging you to like, if I missed out on something, it's like, can you make me one of those, please? I need a complete set because I'm a nerd. I must have it all. And then this Cosmic Crusade line just went on for, a long time. This was the Battle Moon Chaplain. And you had like the bad guy here. Take it out of the bath. Wrath Cosmo. Yeah. Really, I don't know. I was really inspired, and at the time I was struggling. Like we weren't doing, maybe at San Diego Comic-Con when we were distributing other designer toys, we would have one resin figure from him, but that was the only representation. This one was always fantastic. And so can you tell me how ManOrMonster started? How did you become ManOrMonster? And what that transition was from everything else you were doing to like being, known as a toy maker?
The real impetus came at C2E2 in 2012, the Chicago Toy and Comic Expo. And up until that point, the only thing that I really knew about resin bootleg toys was from the article in Toy Fair magazine that Sucklord had done maybe 3 years before that. But I was a subscriber to Toy Fair, as many of us were, I'm sure, and came across this, little like 4-page how-to on, making your own plastic action figures. And I was like, well, that's really fucking cool. Like, I can do that. So I tore the pages out, stuffed them in a folder, and was like, I will get back to that. And then I didn't, for several years. But so anyway, fast forward to C2E2 2012, and I met a few people who would be very influential in getting me started as a toy maker. Those people being Ben Spencer and Marty Hansen, the God Beast. And at their table, they had a lot of different stuff. They had Ben's Galaxor line of 5.5-inch resin figures that Marty was producing. Marty had a bunch of resin stuff that he was making that was Glyos compatible. That was my first introduction to the world of Onel design and Glyos toys. And they also had stuff
for the people who don't know what that is, could you explain what Glyos is?
Glyos is it's a peg and socket system of interchangeability that allows you to kind of build action figures, these modular action figures, sort of like almost like Lego, but with action figures. I mean, I've got tons of them behind me here.
Noted.
But my headphones won't stretch that far for me to grab anything. I don't know why I didn't. I've got 75 other toys sitting right around me here, but yeah, here we go. There's actually, so this is a Mighty Maniacs figure. There's about a dozen different creators right now who work within the Glyos family. So they all use this peg and socket system. Everything just pops right apart. It's super durable, high quality, factory injection molded PVC. So this is all factory made overseas. But yeah, really fun stuff.
And this all started with the Glyos line was the very first line that Onel designed, that Matt Dowdy did. And then he started making other injection molded toys for other creators, but kept his socket design so everything was compatible.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you were sort of doing resin for a while, and then you sort of like morphed into, you started doing, can you talk about like that transition, about going to the injection molded stuff? You were talking about how you were at the show and you saw what they were doing. And then all the way to your comic book and all that stuff.
There was another artist there. His work was there. He wasn't. I've never actually met the guy, but a giant Japanese monster Bad. And I don't know how many people remember his work at all, but it was really kind of like, he probably wouldn't say so, but sort of high concept Masters of the Universe bootleg stuff. He was just doing a lot of different effects, you know, filling things with glitter and just making these really neat, artsy looking, you know, 5.5 He-Man bootlegs. And so I kind of saw that and was like, well, you know, this is what I need to be doing. I had this concept brewing for something, this thing that was going to be called Warlords of Wor. I just didn't know what it was going to be at the time. I was kind of like just developing a coloring book for fun and making up all these wacky characters. And anyway, I discovered this world of resin bootlegging and was like, okay, cool, this is what I'm going to do. So I immediately started designing Bognar and chopped up an old Remco, you know, like AWA figure, and you know, sculpted on top of that, sculpted some new parts, a new head, and you know, started making molds and you know, creating this figure that ended up being like an 11-piece magnetically articulated, you know, art toy.
Wow.
I always kind of I feel like skirted that line between, you know, between the art side of bootlegging and kind of the more functional, you know, play and retail area, is I wanted to make something that you could play with, not just something that, you know, sat on the shelf. So I sort of infused that Glyos mentality of interchangeability into the DNA of Warlords of Wor from the beginning. So, you know, everything came apart and was interchangeable, and everything that I did in 5.5 for years all use that same magnetic system. So, you know, same as Glyos, all of my toys are interchangeable. Yeah, so I just kind of started doing that. I started with Warlords of Wor, and kind of branched out into doing some other just fun things. Like I did an Ash figure at one point, kind of a smaller run of these. I apologize if my light is really terrible, but you know, again, he's got like magnets in his hands, so you can.
But this is still resin, right?
This is all resin.
This is resin.
Yeah,
okay.
Completely.
And then so there comes a point where you stop resin and you move over to injection molded plastic. Can you talk about that? Or can I just insert one thing here, because I sort of know the reason why someone would stop making resin if they have the opportunity to make injection molded plastic, because of how long and tedious it is. But so let's just show. So the first year that I did the PowerCon, which is a He-Man show, I begged and pleaded. I was like, please make this for me. And you made Vador, which was insane. And I was like, please make this for me. And you're like, oh God, I don't want to make these. And I'm like, you know, you have to. I must have these. These have to exist in the world. You're the only one that can do it. And just sort of like humored me. And then I think at the end, it's addition to 20, but I think you only made the first 10, right?
I just did the first 10. I never got around to
I think by the rest of them, you're like, you know what, dude, fuck that, I'm done. So if any of you have number 1 through 10, they're numbered out of 20. 11 through 20 don't exist.
Yeah.
And these things are just, I mean, it's such a Skywalker. It's such a fantastic mashup.
Thanks,
But
man.
so once you can sort of like make something once and send it to a factory in China, that's sort of like game changer, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So from day one, my goal was to do a Glyos line. From that meeting at C2E2 in 2012, I immediately reached out to Dowdy and asked him if, you know, I could do a 5.5 line using the Glyos system. And he thought that it was just going to be a little too much weight for the system to handle for the peg and socket, and it just wouldn't be a very sturdy toy. And B, he encouraged me to create my brand and do resin, and you know, see what kind of market there was for what I created. And it turned out, you know, I had a pretty successful run at things. So over the years, you know, I kept kind of courting Matt Dowdy as it were, and that's kind of what it takes to get into Glyos toy making. You know, you really have to foster a relationship with them and kind of show them that you're serious about being a toy maker.
Well, I've sent a lot of people Matt's way, and Matt does not just work with anybody. Like,
yeah, he's very particular.
He's, I mean, he's got to like what he's working on.
Yeah,
and he has to like, because if he's going to do the work, you know, he's going to put in the time. If he's working on something that he hates, even I ask him like, can't you just, why don't you just do this job? Like, it'll make you a lot of money. And he's like, no, like, he just doesn't, that is not the motivation. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if he's it's just, at least, I don't think he's articulated this to me, except that to tell me that if he doesn't like it, like, or doesn't like it, or if the person is, you know, is going to make it not worth the time because, you know, egos are too big or whatever, it gets
right.
He's always making sure that, like, I think he wants a flow to it, you know. He wants it, I don't want to say to be easy, but it's like,
well, there's just a,
I feel like it's got to make, I feel like it's got to make him happy, you know, to, because I think at the end of the day, I don't think it makes a lot of money, and it has to feel, I think it has to feel right, you know.
That's what it's all about. And you know, everybody, I use this, you know, the term family a lot, because that's really what it is. I mean, we're all friends, we all work together. We all get along really well because we're all very similar people, and are pretty easygoing. So yeah, it's a good crew to be involved with, and a great company, and a really solid product. So I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing there. But yeah, so, you know, again, I was kind of developing this relationship with him over time, and eventually started working on some prototypes. And, you know, Daddy was always telling me, go smaller, go smaller. And I kind of had a 4-inch design that I was working on, and then unbeknownst to me, simultaneously, some other friends of mine, a company, Spy Monkey Creations, who had done a Glyos Masters of the Universe Classics weapon set. They were developing like kind of a sci-fi barbarian 3-inch Glyos figure, and they showed it to me at DKECON in 2015. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, this is exactly what I've been working on. Like, you basically made Warlords of Wor. And I mean, that day we decided that we were going to team up, and you know, I was gonna make this happen finally as a factory produced PVC figure. So I mean, the process for getting that first Bognar figure out took 18 months. It was
Do you have a Bognar handy?
I don't.
It's okay. And then
it's the one thing I forgot was the thing that I'm currently working on. Yeah.
It's quite all right. And then you've also created some content, because you also created a comic book.
Yeah. I skipped over that part. So in 2014, I ran a Kickstarter to do to do a few more comics. I had done 2 that I just kind of funded myself, because you know, Masters of the Universe figures always came with mini comics. Sure. So I wanted that to be part of the brand that I was developing as well. You know, I've always wanted to be this spiritual successor, you know, to Masters of the Universe. So anything they were doing, I wanted to do. So yeah, so I did a couple comics, and then launched this Kickstarter to fund 3 more. And there were, all 5 were going to be printed in mini comic size. And so yeah, that was successful. We got 5 books out, and got to work with some really amazing creators putting those together. Just some phenomenal artists, like some kind of like bucket list artists for me. Some of my personal just icons who were working in the industry at the time. So yeah, very cool experience doing that, and it's something that I've wanted to get back to. We've got still 3 unproduced scripts. It's just, you know, time and money kind of thing, as always.
So it sounds like you had like a very encouraging background for art and a lot of creative people around you. Seemed like very natural and not a lot of, doesn't sound like you got a lot of pushback when you wanted to be a creative person also, which is
My dad, my dad teased me a lot about going to art school. He referred to it as clown school all
oh
the time.
no.
Yeah, yeah. So he's dead now. But
Oh shit.
that's
So
boring as hell. But no.
and then
But yeah,
how
on the whole, yes, my family was very supportive.
how do you think that that has affected you to this day with him referring to art school as clown school?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, are there lingering effects?
yeah, yes, sure.
Yeah.
I mean that stuff stings.
Sure.
But
Now,
but I'm
let me ask you. Let
I'm
me ask you a
happy with
question.
what I do.
Of course. Well, I guess. Let me ask you a question. There's like teasing because of someone's own insecurity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's teasing just to be mean, and then there's sort of like teasing that is, helping people in your community to develop like a thicker skin.
Mm.
There's studies on teasing, and now they call it bullying, and I'm not sure I like all of that. You give it a name, and someone says, "I went to school today and I got bullied." It's like, dude, my name is Dub. Like, I don't look at my experience like I was bullied. Like, people there's dumb kids that said stupid shit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Until I was 6 feet tall, and then they stopped. It's like, why don't you say that to my face in the alley after school? And they're like, well, yeah, okay. It's like, and I wasn't, I was just a nerdy kid, but I was still, so do you think he was is that just a parent's like insecurity looking out for their kid? Like, he's not going to be able to support himself, or was that just being a dick?
It was mostly, I'd say, insecurity. Yeah, he was a photographer himself, and that didn't take him anywhere. His father was a traveling organ salesman for a long time. He sold Hammond organs. He left my dad and his mother and his four brothers, very early, and so he had his own issues as well, and struggled a lot during his life. So I think he definitely grew up in a place where he recognized that that following one's passions didn't necessarily lead to financial stability, and wanted better for me. Anytime he would tell someone that I was going to art school, he always told them that I was going to be a graphic designer, because that apparently was his idea of a legitimate job that you could do, and graphic design was absolutely not what I was going for.
Right.
But yeah. So I think yeah, definitely his own insecurities and wanting better for me. Yeah.
And do you have a legitimate job right now?
I do. Yeah, actually, I fell into civil engineering in the last 6 years. So yeah, I work for a civil engineering firm. I do like CAD work. I design, I design sewer systems and site like parking lots and apartment complexes and schools, and I do all the infrastructure for these things. And
That's insane.
that's kind of my 9 to 5. Yeah,
Wow.
it's really kind of a weird story, but and super weird.
Let's hear it.
So I'd been doing art full time for 3 or 4 years. Like that was my focus. That was my job, and I was getting really unhappy with having to make things to make money. I've always wanted to make things to make myself happy, and so I was getting burnt out really bad, especially with resin making. And this was right around the time of that PowerCon
Right.
when I didn't want to do any more Vadors and Skywalkers. So, so I decided I was going to go back to school here locally, just at a community college, and take some classes doing some digital sculpting, some CAD work. Kind of learn how to sculpt, learn how to 3D print, and kind of push my art in that direction. And I took to CAD really quickly, and within 2 months, realized that I was pretty great at it, and I enjoyed it a lot. So my instructor, who was the head of the program,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you just tell people what CAD is? Because what I remember of CAD, like when I was a kid, was like the black screen with the green lines.
Mhm.
So tell you how old I am.
It's pretty much still the same thing. Yeah,
It's the same thing. Wow.
Yeah.
It all looks like an Apple II Plus or something like.
Yeah. It hasn't gotten much more advanced. It's computer aided drafting. So yeah, it's just drawing in 3D on a 2D computer screen. So, but yeah. Anyway, long story short, my instructor had an application or a posting rather for an intern at a civil engineering firm. And he's like, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. Why don't you check it out? And I did, and they brought me on, and I interned for 6 months, and just really kind of fell in love with the work and with the people I was with in the office, and they hired me full time, and that's what I've been doing. So
that's amazing.
It's really cool that I get to work in a field where I have an actual physical effect on the place where I live. Like I can go anywhere in the town where I live, and there's something that I designed that has been built and put into the world. So I'm literally like changing the landscape of where I'm at. It's pretty rad.
I mean, that could work the other way too. They also know who to blame, right?
Yeah. Well,
so tell me about the creativity that you use at work and the creativity of your personal work, and do they conflict with one another? After a full day of work, do you come home, are you able to dive into your personal work, or are all your creative juices kind of zapped?
It's more about the time that I have. Family is a very important part of my day-to-day life as well. So I spend 8 hours at work. Fortunately, my commute is 7 minutes either way. So I don't have to spend a lot of time dealing with that. But yeah, a good chunk of my time is spent just being with my family and being present, in my home, and with my wife and the dogs and our friends. And so that's where a lot of my focus is, just for me personally and spiritually. That's what really brings me the most joy. So designing toys and having that creative outlet is still an incredibly important part of what makes me who I am and what I want to do and put out into the world. But I find that I have less time for it. And it's not that I have less desire or, fewer ideas. It's just that I have to prioritize. So,
of course. I mean, we're all like adults, and at least we're supposed to do that and make good decisions, although we don't always make good decisions. Right. But I guess, so there's not a lot of time for it, but so does that make you unhappy, or are you getting enough creative fulfillment out of your day job that, of course, you want to do toys more, but given that it is not the highest priority, like it doesn't sound, at least on the surface from the way you're talking about it, that it's making you miserable. It sounds like, from how you're talking about the civil engineering, like it's a creative outlet, and you take some pride in it, and you're actually I mean, designing a toy is fun. Like designing like a building in a parking lot, a sewer system, that seems like, you know, a little more important for the world than us people who sit in our basements and play with toys all day.
Well, yeah, I do get a lot better response from people when I tell them, you know, hey, I designed, you know, this 13 building, you know, 184 acre apartment complex versus, you know, hey, I designed this little action figure. People understand one a little better than the other. So, you know, I guess professionally, it's a little more well received, one versus the other. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I really do. I love my job. I find immense satisfaction and challenge in it, which is, you know, toy making is fun. It's not super challenging necessarily. Not the way I'm doing it now. You know. It's,
well, if you'd sit and pour more resin figures over and over and over again, maybe it would be a bigger challenge.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
The challenge of sitting there and doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the day job gets tedious. It's definitely the same thing over and over some days, but it's, you know, it's pretty cool. I dig it.
Nice. And so, as far as the toys go, like, is that something is always going to be a part of your life, or could you see like retiring from toys?
I can see retiring at some point. Yeah. It's something that has been on my mind a lot lately. Not necessarily stepping back from toy making, but as a collector, kind of, you know, figuring out what's important to me in my own personal collection.
Collecting's a whole nother stuff. We could talk about the disease of collecting. Stepping back from collecting is for everyone who's watching, I'm sorry. So but yeah, not you know, I'm not helping with that at all. Yeah, but I mean, I understand about the collecting, sure, but I mean about the toy making. Like, do you see yourself retiring, you know, from civil engineering one day and being like a, you know, 75-year-old man, like, you know, pouring resin or making toys, or is the day job enough? Like,
the day job is not enough right now.
Mhm.
You know, again, toys are still a really important part of what makes me happy, you know, kind of my identity, you know. So that's not going to stop anytime soon. I still have a lot that I want to do, a lot of things that I want to create. This is now the 10th anniversary this year, this September, of the release of my first Bognar figure.
wow.
So, you know, maybe I'll throw together some molds and pour a little bit more resin before the year's out. We'll see.
Don't do it for me. You're supposed to do this for yourself, like your own satisfaction.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, there's still stuff to do. Hey, Brad, go grab me a Bognar, a 3-inch. Just a Bognar. Sorry,
Don't you know what a Bognar is? Do you have a copy?
Really does.
Do you have a copy of your comic, Candy?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't think so anyway.
Everyone watching this has Google. It's okay.
Yeah. I'm in the dungeon.
You're in the dungeon.
Yeah,
why do toy makers always have dungeons?
It's because that's what well, at least in my case, that's what my wife allows me is the
I see.
It's a natural. So hey, it's Battle Babies, everybody.
Battle Babies, what's up? How's it going?
We have a regular family get together every Saturday where we hang out, we have some cocktails and make food. So
Bognar is 3.
Okay, Bognar is 3. So this was the very first PVC release. Again, I'm sorry, the color seems to be a little bit washed out, but
looks fine over here.
Tentacles, and yeah, it's a it's a bit of a difference between the first resin Bognar to
Wow.
what I do now. So
But the second one is injection molded with the Onel system.
yes,
And so
correct.
the size reduction was to make it fit.
Yeah,
within
kind of keep it in scale with all the other Glio stuff, so it's more compatible, more interchangeable and playable with the other lines. They're all
Nice.
kind of that 3-inch scale roughly.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then you said you have 3 more scripts written for issues. What'd you say? Issues 6 through 9 of Warlords of
6,
War.
7, and 8. Yeah.
6, 7, and 8.
Mhm.
And then that is that going to be a Kickstarter?
I think honestly, right now I'm working on, and I've been working on this for some time. But again, time is a really hard to find commodity these days. But I've been working on putting a Kickstarter together for an all new Warlords of War figure, our first female figure.
Mhm.
So a completely new buck, as well as maybe a couple more characters from the toy line, from the comic series, to kind of start fleshing out the brand a little bit more, because I've been peddling repaints of these 2 figures, Bognar and Clobber, now for a few years, and I want to stretch out and make some new toys. So I'm hoping that with a little bit more exposure through a Kickstarter, that maybe I can pick up a few more customers and a little bit more income on that end, and get some more comics done, just out of pocket, as opposed to doing a Kickstarter for them.
Sure. Well, it sounds great. We're looking forward to all of the fun things you're going to put out in the future, and I really appreciate you taking the time and letting us into your life. And I think it's always interesting for other artists to hear how other people are surviving, and how they, what they gain their satisfaction from, and manage their time, and prioritize things. And I think there's not enough discussion about that for creative people. So here we are, and thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for going a little deep on the questioning. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, talking about the weather is bullshit. So all right, well, enjoy your day. Say hi to everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
All right,
Thanks again.
guys.
So many amazing toys.